Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from. We are here today with Brian Doty, who is the Channel Development Manager with Unitrends MSP. We are also joined by Matthew Brady. He's the Pre-Sales Engineer Manager for Unitrends MSP. All right, that was a mouthful, but I think we got through it and didn't make any mistakes. Perfect. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you for having us, Scott. I'm glad to be here with you.
So, Brian, I just saw Facebook earlier, and you were on an airplane. You did the whole vendor channel thing where you got your legs stretched out in the perfect seat. Everybody wants that seat, so that's awesome. Well, where are you at today?
So I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. So yeah, I love when I get Southwest first class. It's always a treat.
All right. Well, I don't know. $10 says you'll be singing that song by Arrested Development later, Tennessee. It's probably going to be stuck in your head. So, all right. Well, Matthew, where are you located at?
So I'm in southern New Hampshire. I'm in lovely New England, so just north of Boston.
Great. Well, I bet that the weather is much cooler where you are, even where you are, Brian, than where I am right now. It is getting higher and higher. It's supposed to be about 100 degrees today here in South Carolina, and the humidity, I think they said it was going to make it seem like it was 106.
Ooh.
So what's the weather like for y'all?
I got 78 right now.
Not bad.
Yeah, not bad at all.
It's nice.
We got 93 here in the outskirts of Nashville here. So it's definitely hot. It was hot this morning when I got off the plane at 7 a.m. It was a little sticky.
Never good.
Never good. When it's that early, yeah, it's no good.
Well, but Brian, you're initially from the Pennsylvania area, right?
That's right. I'm from Pittsburgh. Yep.
So the cooler weather, you're accustomed to the cooler weather. I don't know.
That's right. It's
always hot and humid in South Carolina. I just can't seem to catch a break. So the weather certainly can't make up its mind. But I appreciate y'all taking the time to have this live stream with me here. I wanted to, start with you, Brian. You're the channel development manager for Unitrends. For those of those audience members who don't or have not heard of Unitrends before, what can you tell us about Unitrends?
Yeah, I always like to say that we're the best kept secret in the MSP space because, I talk to a lot of MSPs and, I'll ask them if they've heard of us, and, unless they've worked with us in the past, a lot of MSPs are like, I know some of the other players out there, but I haven't heard of you guys. What makes you special, right?
Sure.
It comes down to really what we're going to talk about mostly today. And that's, making sure that your backups are going to work for you and for your clients, right? And that's one of those things that, as I go and talk to MSPs, I hear it all the time. It's like, I've got to be able to rest easy at night. It's a mess trying to test and manage all these different backups, let alone all the different backup solutions that we have today. And so we've got a unified platform for backup that lets you really protect your client's data, no matter where it lives. It can be, sitting on-prem. It can be, sitting in a SaaS platform on a remote endpoint like my laptop right now. Or one of the public cloud vendors that, that a lot of people are using these days. So there's a lot of different options out there for backup, and it's good to have one place to do it all. But also, when you're taking backups, you want to be sure that they're going to work for you when you need it. And we found a way to automate the testing. And I know Matthew's going to talk a lot more about how we've automated the testing of backups to go a lot deeper than that operating system level, right? So a lot of backup solutions give you the checkbox. You feel warm and fuzzy. Okay, it's successful. And then you go to spin it up and it fails. There's, a database that's corrupt or what have you, or an application fails to load. So we test all of those things in a runbook environment and can make sure that you can say for certain to your clients that yes, this last backup that we took, it's going to be successful in spinning up for you in the event of a bad situation.
And I have done some of these live streams with other backup providers as well. And one of the
Sure.
things that's common among all backup providers is that you should be testing those backups.
That's right.
So if you're not testing those backups, I want to ask what is your opinion on charging for the time it takes to test and do the run through of the backup? Should MSPs be charging for that, or is that something they should just be doing?
I think they should be doing it.
Okay.
It certainly is a cost, right? It certainly should be factored in when you're pricing out your services, right?
Sure.
And inclusive of that. But I find that MSPs are doing a couple of different things. They're either skipping it, which I think is probably more common than it should be.
Sure.
Or they're really spending a ton of time on it. And like you said, there's a significant labor cost to that. And really just managing backups in general, let alone the troubleshooting, the VSS writer errors and things that happen. Like, a lot of things can go wrong with backups, and
Sure.
You got to be in there testing it and making sure that they're going to work for you.
Absolutely. Well, great advice. I totally agree. You've got to have some checks and balances system for that.
That's right. That's right.
So, well, good deal. Well, what else should MSP providers be doing for their clients as it relates to backups? What are some other good advice other than just do it? I mean, because that's probably the number one advice is make sure you're backing up data for your clients. But what are some other key things or key points you'd like to bring in?
I think about that. You've got to think about all of it, right? That you have a customer and they have this server and they have this file server and they may have a few other applications, and those things matter. But they've also got their data sitting inside of Microsoft 365. They've also got their data sitting inside of Salesforce, because that's something that matters, and that kind of thing. So, when I think about data protection, we got to look at it holistically, and we can't just focus on the things that have lights and that we can go and touch and feel the buzz, if you will, as we go into the data room or the data closet. So, I think that you've got to look at it and think about that there's varying levels of disasters. There are what I like to call bad days and really bad days inside of the IT world. A bad day means that you've got an outage for part of the day, and a really bad day means that we're looking at buying new equipment because we've had water or smoke in the data room. We've got to think about those varying degrees of disasters and think about how we protect all of the data. What are we doing to protect ourselves and protect our customers from themselves, if you will, right? How are we making sure that they're not letting the bad guy in because this phishing email came through and said, hey, I need you to click on this link so that the IT group can take a look at your computer. And then all of a sudden now they've got access. We've got to help our customers protect themselves from themselves. We've got to help our customers protect themselves from all the bad guys that are out there. And we've got to think about that in terms of every set of data that's present, not just the easy low-hanging fruit and not just the obvious ones.
Very good points. And there's a lot of low-hanging fruit lately. So, and it's a very good point that you brought up too. We got to be trying to protect the customers from themselves to a degree. Well, what are some horror stories that you have found out along the way where MSPs may have thought, or IT providers thought, that their customers were protected, and when it came down to it, they really weren't, maybe because they weren't testing the backups? So
I have an older story. This is actually from my days as in the channel with Continuum, actually. I had a partner. They weren't using the Continuum solution and they were not using the Unitrends solution. I'll tell you those two things. But they were using a competitor solution at the time, and they actually had a tornado come through the area, and it wiped out this building, a big
Oh,
chunk
wow.
of it anyway. And I mean, it just totally trashed their equipment, their hardware, and they thought that everything was being replicated to the cloud and they could just spin up in the cloud and they were good to go. And what they found was that they really didn't have a run book. They really didn't have a tested plan in place. And it took them several days to get just their cloud backup operational. And they found that they had to go back like several backups. So they lost their recovery point objective in that failover, and it just didn't work well at all for the client, and they almost lost the client. They were able to save them and reassure them that this was a failure on the vendor's part. But like, there were lessons learned along the way in that,
Sure.
and things that like stuck in my head from there on, that
Well,
I made sure,
and I've talked to customers that have gone through experiences where they thought things were being tested and they thought that things were under control, right? And then they actually got hit with ransomware. And the stark truth that slapped them in the face was that they didn't know whether or not they had good backups, and they didn't know where they needed to go to restore. They got hit with ransomware, and it took a day or two for them to realize the full impact of it. And then there were all of this time and energy spent. Brian just mentioned it as well, where they had to go back several restore points. Part of that is that they didn't have that piece of knowledge at their fingertips of where they've got good backups and when they were potentially impacted or infected. And that idea of testing the backups, that's where that comes in. And then also the other side of that is that you have to bring in some level of detection where you're paying attention that what has changed in the environment, and we intersect that with when did I last have a good backup that I know is good. And then at that point in time, you put yourself on a path for recovery where you know where you're going, as opposed to a path of recovery where you're guessing and you're like, well, maybe we go left or maybe we go right. And if you go left, it circles you right back and you're right back to where you were again. And then you got to go,
Right.
all right, now we got to do this again. So there's a lot of spent time and spent cycles when you don't know when and where you need to recover.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's that is not a position that I would want to be in.
I
as
always
an
talk
IT
about that.
provider.
Those are uncomfortable conversations. When I was in college, I was working as a law intern, but I was doing computer stuff. And the guys that we worked for, you could tell how well off in the company they were by how many windows they had in their office. And when I worked, it's actually part of their compensation. But when I worked as an MSP, I always talk to my guys about the fact that we don't want to have those uncomfortable conversations with guys that have more windows in their office than you do, because you're going to have to explain to them why you didn't know where the restore point was, why they lost 4 days worth of data when you're trying to figure out where they got hit with ransomware and what the clean place to go was. We want to stay out of those conversations with guys with windows.
Well, I understand Unitrends does an excellent job and has been doing an excellent job at backing up data for a long time, years.
That's right.
Do we know how far it goes? Yeah, decades. I was going to say, do we know how far that goes back?
Pushing 30 years right now.
Wow.
1989, I believe, was the start of it all.
All right. Well, back in 1989, I forget the media that we probably had. Was it the old tape, the cassettes?
That's
giant magnetic tape.
Okay. Yeah. So Unitrends has always been a backup solution and provider, even way back then. Okay. Well, what lessons do you think? How has not lessons, but how has the company grown? Do you think over the years into what it is today? Just thinking about that, your mission has been the same for what, 30 decades or 3 decades now, 30 years. Your mission's been the same, but the way that you handle the mission, back then they didn't have the fancy, disaster recovery devices that we have today. You couldn't spin it up in the cloud. It was, you had to wait on this tape to go through. Were y'all doing tapes back then?
Oh yeah,
in the early days. Disc,
disc,
burn
floppy.
it to CD. I gotcha.
pretty much any medium that you had available, right?
Okay.
And that's the thing. Even today, I didn't know this, prior to joining the team here, but it was actually I'm sitting in a demo with a potential customer and found out that we still can go to tape if that's
Oh,
for
wow.
some reason a requirement. Yeah, you can go to tape if you need to. So we support a lot of different mediums still today, and I think that's something that that flexibility isn't always there with other solutions.
Okay. Interesting. So those old tape backup drives y'all can use and everything. I don't know. I'm going down memory lane now. I'm having a nostalgic event here.
That's
It's
right.
not necessarily our preferred choice, right?
I was going to say, I wouldn't recommend it.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah.
If you come to me and you want to talk about bolstering your DR and your business continuity, I'm going to talk about an all-in-one appliance where we can do backups, we can use it to do testing, and then I'm going to talk to you about getting your data off-site with an automated way to do that. We're going to think about offsite into the Unitrends cloud where we can make sure that it's immutable and can't be touched and can't be deleted. And then we can start talking about layers, right? The next layer after getting it offsite is one of the biggest advancements that we made as a company, is the ability to back up these systems, keep them offsite, but then spin them up, right? I mean, we can help help them spin up, and in a DR situation, there's always 100 lists of 100 things that you've got to take care of, right? The servers got to be reordered. We got to do this. We got to do that. Well, with Unitrends, we take care of a rock solid local appliance and then give you the ability to just make a phone call, and we can spin that up, and we move some of those items off of those lists off of your list, and we take care of them and then make it available to you and your customers so that all they have to do is connect in. So it's a big stance. You were talking about the media. I think that I've been in backup for a long time. I spent several years teaching junior high and high school math, and then came into backup, and I've been there longer than I care to admit. But I saw it change where we were just backing up data and we were focusing on the files, and now we protect systems. That's a mindset change that's huge, so that we can protect systems and recover systems and ensure that the business keeps going.
The whole system, not just an access,
not just a small piece,
or
right?
Excel spreadsheet. Yeah.
For the files themselves. Well, and when you look at a lot of the compliance, the different regulatory compliance that are out there, right? Even you can throw cyber liability insurance in its own category there of compliance, if you will. And all of them talk about not only backing up the systems, but being able to test them and guarantee their recovery. And that's something that, not only ensures, but everybody thinks is the best practice, so it's something that it makes it easier for us to tout, like, you should be doing this, because there's a lot of people standing there independently saying the same thing.
Well, how hard is it? And I think we're going to get into a demo, I hope. But how hard is it, just with a verbal answer, to, test those backups with the Unitrend platform?
Well,
very easy.
It's
automated. The setup for it's intuitive. I think that sometimes other platforms have got the ability, but the setup is intimidating. Our setup is a 4-step wizard where you simply select the items that you want to test. You identify what the parameters that we're testing with are and how we're going to do that. And then you set up the options, and then you schedule it, and it will go through the process. And the process is there regardless of what kind of environment it is. If we're talking about someone that's got Hyper-V and VMware environments where we've got a lot of virtualization, we've got a really great option. But if we've got a customer that doesn't have a lot of virtualization, they're still running some physical servers, which happens a lot with our smaller customers, we can do a lot of this on the appliance itself, not asking for additional resources out of the environment, and then give them that same peace of mind that you've got a good backup and you could recover. And so that flexibility comes into how easy it is to do, is that we can protect any environment and then help you test any environment.
That's excellent. Well, are you ready to dive into the demo?
I am ready. I'm ready. I've
Awesome.
got a little bit of information that I'm going to use to kind of set the stage, if you
Okay.
will.
Sure.
And then I'll jump in. So let me share my screen out here, guys. Make sure that we can see me. Can you see me okay?
Yeah.
That's good.
All right. All right. So this is a kind of a reference or a framework that I've been talking about our product and for a while now, with the idea that ransomware is out there, it's rampant, and it's going after everybody. When I first came into IT, I came in through the security side of things, and we were all worried about protecting the enterprise because that's where the threat was. The threat is now with every one of your customers, big or small. And so we've got to be armed with the right tools to be able to survive it. So what Unitrends does is Unitrends gives you 5 distinct capabilities to be able to survive and thrive in the face of a ransomware attack. Talk about protecting the data. This is where, we use the right, we back up the data the right way. We can get it off site. We can automate all of that, whether we're talking about desktops, laptops, or servers, and then we can get it into the cloud. I show a little bit of information here about spanning. Spanning is a product that we have that allows you to protect your Google and your Office 365, your Salesforce. Once again, in that same mindset that we need to protect the data the right way. Then we bring in the idea that Unitrends gives you a secure way to make it happen, where we've got encrypted data, two-factor authentication, purpose-built Linux appliance that keeps us out of that Windows attack zone and makes our backups themselves immutable, or excuse me, immune to the actual attack. Then we can talk about spanning, protecting those cloud environments in the same way with encrypted data, two-factor authentication, OAuth 2, which is kind of cool because it just means that you use your credentials from the tenant. You don't have to give me a dedicated user that's been elevated. And then BYOK is a big deal because then you can meet all of your compliance and regulatory things of you owning the encryption key. As we move to the right and we think about what Unitrends does for detection, this is where the idea of detecting for ransomware comes into play. What we can do is use a artificial intelligence, if you will. We're just using a predictive analytics engine to look at, understand what normal is. Because when you get hit with ransomware, normal goes out the window and you have all of these statistics, they jump off the page. So we monitor that, we watch that so that you can understand when you've been hit. I spoke about this idea of that you've got to know not only when you've been hit, but where you've got good restore points. And this is that part that I was talking about. Now, a couple of other products that show up there in our detect, this is part of our total protection suite where we talk about a unified BCDR. Graphis is a phishing defense platform that we have that'll help you with your tenant inside of Microsoft and Google. And a lot of ransomware attacks start with a phishing attack. So with Graphis, we can use AI-based metrics with around 50 of them that we monitor and we do automatically inside of the tenant. And then the dark web monitoring there is where we talk about credential exposure, where the idea is that if we can find your credentials, someone else can too. And if they can find them, they can access your data. So we want to have every tool in place that we can help to detect the issues and threats that are local, but also in your cloud data. And that brings us to this idea of testing, which is where we're going to spend the bulk of our time today. But all of this lines up so that we can recover, and whether we're talking about recovering files or systems or full orchestrated recovery, which is actually something I'm going to show you today that we can do. The idea is that Unitrends arms you with the things that you need so that you can recover. So when we think about testing and bringing this guy in focus, what we want to do is we want to eliminate the unknown. A lot of MSPs and a lot of customers look at testing and they don't know how to do it, or they don't know what's entailed, or they don't know what it's going to cost. I mean, just pick the excuse, but they also don't know what it's going to be like when that bad day happens. And they really don't know what that really bad day is going to be like. So let's remove all of that. Let's orchestrate it. Let's do it automatically. And let's give you the information you need to remove the excuses that says that this thing is going to take me a bunch of time, cost me a bunch of money. We want to do that through automation. We want to increase the confidence that we could detect when we have an issue, that we know that we can meet those goals, those RPOs and RTOs. Do we have the right data, but are we also protecting it the right way so that we could recover in that 8-hour window before we start losing money? Big questions. And then we want to take away that guessing and enable resiliency, make it so that we can actually get to a point where we can recover everything. Now, I want to focus a little bit on something here that's called post-restore sandbox for insurance verification. Wow, big mouthful, but I'm going to walk you through this. We're going to talk about here in just a second. I'm going to go right into the UI and show you what this looks like, but we're going to talk about how that we can not only test your backups, but we can help you test your restores. We had a customer, large customer, they got hit with ransomware, and by large, we're talking just south of 800 VMs impacted across multiple data centers, multiple continents. Not a simple attack, a complex problem. And they were ready to use Unitrends to start restoring their environment. And as they started getting ready, the bean counter in the back raised his hand and said, hey guys, we have an insurance policy and we want to get paid on this thing. But it says here that we have to be able to test the restores before we can get paid on our cyber insurance. So what Unitrends did is this recovery assurance process that we talk about, that we're going to look at how we can test your backups. We actually helped them use that same process to spin up copies of their VMs inside of isolation, and then use a third-party virus or malware scan to make sure that they were clean, and then push them into production. It took these guys about a day. They recovered all of the VMs. They got them all running. They got all of their check boxes that they had scanned the restore points. But the exclamation point on that sentence is that they got every penny of their cyber insurance because they had recovery assurance in place.
That's awesome.
So let's kind of dive into this. So the first thing I want to do is dive into what we call UniView. So one of the things about Unitrends, it's part of the Kaseya family. We've got around 30 products designed to help the IT organization function and do what they do. We're specifically talking about backup, and UniView is the place where we bring all of that together. So if you'll notice, we've got the Unitrends Appliance happening here. We also have what we call our Endpoint Backup, where we can talk about protecting desktops, laptops, those remote power users, or even those executives. And then I also mentioned this before, this is where we can go in and we can talk about protecting Office 365 and Google, and this is called spanning, but we can bring all of this together into one interface so that you as an MSP get to manage every piece of this. So what I want to do though is I want to focus on this idea of testing and kind of look at how this shows up here and then give you a little bit of the nuts and bolts behind it. Okay. So what we're doing is looking at macro here, right? This is all of the backup environment that we manage. We can look at the alerts, we can see where my jobs are, but I can very, very easily and very quickly take this and go micro. So I'm going to narrow this down and I'm going to drill down on one of my customers. And that's it. I can drill down on that customer and then I can actually show the assets that they're protecting. Now, there's a couple of things going on. This is a lab environment where we've been doing it's kind of under construction. So we have a little bit of warnings, but it's kind of cool that in one click, I'm looking at this and I know all of the status of my backups and I can operate on that, right? So if you'll notice, if we take a look at this second line right here, you see this right here, Scott, see, he's got a green circle. And this guy's got a green check mark. Which one would you rather have, Scott? A green circle?
A green check. Green is good. But I think I'd rather have the check.
Because this green, you see where it says there that we've got backup success, but we also have certification success. Okay. This is that test. So what we're talking about is an automated process where we have actually tested a restore point, and we are now putting a stamp of approval on it that says that this thing is certified and that if we needed the restore from it, we could. So what this interface will allow us to do is we can take it, we can jump directly into an appliance. I'm going to actually jump right into my lab into an appliance that's got a little bit different configuration, so I can kind of talk about everything that we do.
Okay.
But what we've got here is recovery assurance. And the two eternal questions of all backups: do I have a good backup and how long will it take me to recover? So let's tackle them. So the way we do this is with what we call a data copy access job. We create a special job. This is that 4-step process that I mentioned.
Okay.
We assign VMs to it, and then we run it on a scheduled basis where he's actually going to take those VMs and spin them up and boot them. Now, this is where the flexibility comes. If it is a smaller environment where we don't have a lot of virtualization, we can utilize the appliance and we'll boot these guys on the appliance. And then we actually provide a report that's got screenshot verification that it booted and that you could log into it if you needed to.
Wow.
If we have VMware or Hyper-V, we can take it a few levels down. We're using that environment. We're going to create some isolated networking just using the pieces of VMware that are in there. And we actually test at the OS level. We go on there and we can say that, yep, sure enough, we know that we can talk to the domain. We can talk to all of these pieces. Now, two eternal questions. Do I have a good backup? Well, look at all these green check marks here. Scott, you said you like the green check marks. This looks like a lot of green check marks, right? That's good.
It is.
That's good. So that's telling us that we can recover. If we take it one step further, I'm going to go right back into my dashboard and we're going to talk about how long it takes. So here's my data copy access job again. And here I have a profile that I've defined, and we'll take a look at that profile in just a second. But that profile defines my goal. I want an RTO and an RPO, and I want to know how long it takes and if I can get there. And so we actually test against that. Imagine being an MSP and being able to go to a customer and say with 100% confidence that I know that you could recover and I could get you to recover in 2 hours and I could do it with restore points that have been certified. There's a little bit of power in that, and that's that's huge, right? Now, kind of coming back to your question of should MSPs be charging for it? I think that it shouldn't be necessarily a line item, but I think it should be part of the service. But when you put that in there as part of the service, then you make sure that you deliver it, and you deliver it without adding additional resources from your team to it, so that when you do have that uplift, all you're doing is collecting the money instead of adding more resources to your team. So we can automate this guy so that you can do that.
Very nice.
So let's look at the nuts and bolts, right? So does this sound hard? I mean, it looks pretty, but does it sound hard?
Not at all.
Let's make sure it's not. We've got our data copy access job right here. If I fire it up, I've been talking about 4 steps, and here they are. All I have to do is select what I want to recover. Now, you'll notice there's a few things that show up here. We have these VMs. These are VMware VMs. And then we also have our image level backup. So this is an agent that we have that is our image level agent. He allows us to back up and protect Windows systems. He's going to be the key if we want to actually spin these guys up on the appliance. We can use that image level agent, and I don't care if he's a physical system or a Hyper-V system or a VMware system, or even a scale or something else that shows up out there in the wild. We can take and use that image agent and recover them and test them in a very easy way using the appliance resources.
Okay.
Now, the second step of this is kind of the key part. This is where we create a profile, and that profile lets us specify where we're going to recover this stuff. So this particular profile is looking at it from the VMware side. If I were using the resources of the appliance, I would simply select the target would be the appliance, and then it would take care of the rest of this profile stuff. But an important part of this, with it being VMware, is that I'm going to show in a sandbox, or add in a sandbox network. Real simple. It's just a virtual switch that's not connected to anything. So bring that in, you create that. And with that, I can spin up 10 VMs there. They can all talk to each other, but they can't and won't be able to impact any of my production stuff. So if we're doing it inside of a virtual environment, we create that isolation. If we're doing it on top of the appliance has already got that built in, and all we have to do is spin these guys up and test them. We like to measure, so we're going to create rules here that we measure against. We're going to take this off of somebody's to-do list, right? IT people live on 3 lists. There's the stuff that that you've got to do, the stuff that's on fire, and then the stuff that you'll get to when you have time, right? Unfortunately, testing backups usually ends up on that 3rd list.
Yeah.
And it gets pushed to the bottom, because IT people live in the dark, and backup is in the darkest part of the IT world, right? If the file server doesn't work, what happens?
No, the whole office is down.
And
Everybody's
the office
down.
complains, right?
Yeah.
The boss's secretary calls you and says, I can't get to this file, right? If the print server is down, what happens?
Nobody can print.
And what do?
They call.
They call. If the backup doesn't run, who calls?
Nobody typically.
Nobody typically, because it lives in the dark. So if it's in the dark, let's automate it. Let's take it off of that to-do list, and let's make it so that we can keep you as the MSP focused on the things that are in the light that your customers like to know that you do. They like to know that you answer the phone when the file server is not reachable so that you can make sure that they can get to the files. They like to know that you keep the printer going. So let's let you focus on the things in the light and let us handle the things in the dark. And let's get to a point where we've got a solid solution. So what we're doing here is we're defining VM options. So this is where we can go in and we can talk about orchestrating these guys, where we talk about boot orders and specific order in which they come up. Some systems have to come up before others, so we would do that. This is also where, when we talk about with a VMware environment, where we can go in and we can add in some cool granularity to understand not only did we boot, but by the way, my Windows services started and the application worked. So think about that idea of protecting the whole system.
Yeah.
This is how we're verifying that whole system. Pretty simple. Now, if we were looking at a situation where we had a nice VMware environment, we're running these tests, and all of a sudden that really bad day happens, or a bad day happens, and we're going to end up restoring a bunch of VMs, right? We've had a ransomware attack and it's time to recover them. Well, inside of this virtual environment, we can utilize our failover capabilities. So if you're counting clicks, that was 1. Here's 2. So I'm going to do 3 clicks, and I'm going to help you recover all 3 VMs. I'm going to do it in an ordered fashion. And by the way, these guys are green. And when I hover over them, these guys are certified. Think about all the places that we've seen those green check marks, right? These guys are good. These have big green check marks associated with them. So we know that they've been tested and that we could use them and we could restore. Now, if we were to kind of intersect some of the other things we've talked about, right? This is all about ransomware survivability. We're doing ransomware detection. So if you'll bear with me, I want to show you something real quick. Give me just a second here. Just going to jump into a slide so I can kind of show you what this ransomware detection looks like, because it ties in to what we're doing here. So we use the predictive analytics engine to basically understand what normal behavior is. And we watch metrics like change rate, compression rate, growth rate. We have a measurement called entropy that looks at the amount of random behavior in the backup. And when those things all jump off the page, we let you know that you've got a problem. We tell you when it was and where it was. Now, if any of you are paying attention, I promise none of you will ever have a notification that says that you had a problem in 1969, like I do on my screen.
I was just looking at that. I knew you were going to
an amazing thing. This is in my lab. We let sales guys in my lab. There's no way that we're letting real ransomware out with that kind of thing happening.
It might have been my fault, Matthew. Sorry.
Yeah. It could be a bad thing. But if you think about this, right? So I've given you a direction here where you now know when you were impacted, right? We know that this server was impacted on this day and this time. Then we come back here. Now I've got a set of restore points that not only do we know that they're good, but they're certified. And so now I've got 2 pieces of information that all I have to do is intersect. When's the last time I had a backup before the infection, and when's the last time I had a backup that was certified? If I use that, we are not guessing, am I going left or am I going right, all to end up right back to where I was. We are trudging forward on a path, and we're going to be able to restore with confidence and recover from this ransomware attack.
Very good. Makes sense.
That's it. And that's the big part of it, right? That's it. You know, the testing part of it comes together pretty easily. We've got some other bells and whistles that go in there. You know, if we are talking about high availability and we want somebody to be able to recover within a matter of minutes, we can create what's called a replica. With that replica, all they have to do is turn it on, because it's a dynamic cold copy. Every time they run a backup, we update it, and we can test that dynamic cold copy too. It's standby. All we've got to do is turn it on. We can have the same confidence that we could do it. And once again, that flexibility, physical or virtual, The testing method is a little bit different, but the end result is still that you get to be able to put your stamp of certification on it, that this is a restore point that we could recover from, right? The big why should I test? Why does it matter, right? Well, there's a lot of the kind of well, it's to make sure that we can recover. It's so that we can, not lose business. The day and age that we live in, you may be asked to test for no other reason than your insurance policy says that you have to be able to do that, and you have to be able to show a report. This report I can show you. Bear with me real quick here. I'm going to pull over.
So that also satisfies the insurance company requirements.
It does, and that's a big part of it, right? Here, guys, check this out. So this is a report from a physical appliance that is doing on-box testing. So this is generated each morning. It'd be sent to you. We've got all of these nice successful pieces here where we can see where we actually spun these guys up. And because it's a physical system, we're using those on-box resources. We actually take it all the way to the login screen and send you a picture of that login screen. So now you're there. That's it. So, once again, IT people live in the dark, and the darkest corner is backup, right? So let's let the stuff that's in the light, let's let the MSP focus on that. Let's let the MSP be the hero that they need to be, right? They don't need to spend time chasing backups, but when it's time to recover the boss lady's file or the boss's secretary important thing, they want to be the hero, and this is what allows you to do that. But then when you think about those really bad days, we're talking about really big heroes where you know that you could recover, that you can stake your reputation on it, and that you can continue to collect that monthly revenue because you're going to keep them in business.
Well, tell me a little bit about the Unitrends cloud.
Okay.
What can you tell me about it?
Yeah, so the Unitrends cloud, give me just a second. I'm actually going to maybe use a little visual aid. Give me a second to clear this guy out.
Okay.
That looks totally clean, Matthew. I don't know.
that was a quality whiteboard session. So that's what I do is I use some of the.
I was going to say that was some serious education going on there, huh?
It was, and we're going to do some of that for you. Give me a sec here. Give me a sec.
Okay.
So this is what I love to do with customers is I love to take them to a point where I can explain it to a point with them in stages. And so I use my magic pen to do that. So let me share this guy back out. And let's talk a little bit about the Unitrends cloud and how that works. So high level, and I know that we don't have a ton of time, but I always tell people, so I used to be a junior high school math teacher once upon a time. It's a lifetime ago, but the thing about being in front of a group of 8th graders, the bell is always going to ring. Whether or not you've gotten through what you want to get through or not, the bell is always going to ring. So you guys are going to ring a bell on me, and I got to make sure that I've given you what you need. So let's talk about the Unitrends cloud. So we've talked about the appliance. We've talked about the fact that we can run those backups. We're going to replicate that data into the Unitrends cloud. Now, if we think about under the covers, what's really going on is that we are taking the data from the local appliance and we're replicating it to a second appliance inside of our cloud. We use hot target replication to get there, and that just simply means that we send the small pieces. Now, the cool thing about these two appliances is they're completely independent. And that independence is what gives us the fact that we can talk about immutable cloud storage where they can't touch it or delete it in the cloud. But it also allows us to talk about where we would size the appliance for 30 days. But in the cloud with our MSP customers, we talk about 12 months, or we talk about an infinite retention. So they can maintain 30 days locally, maintaining the without having to add an additional storage on the appliance side, and then keep 12 months or even an infinite retention where we keep yearly copies forever. Now, the way that the way it's priced out, it's based on the amount of data that we can protect with the appliance, not the amount of data that you're going to save, transmit, or anything like that. So it's an upfront cost. So that's one of the things that our customers appreciate, and that our MSP, the customers of our MSPs appreciate as well, is that we're not going to keep handing you a cloud bill that just keeps getting bigger each month. There are some really great things that you can do inside of some of the third-party clouds, but the fact of it is that cheapest day that you'll ever have is today. And so we're predictable. Now, Once we've got that data inside our cloud, we've been talking about this idea of testing the backups. We can actually spin up, oh, wait, come back. We can spin up our systems inside of our cloud with our DRaaS platform. This is a white glove service. What that means is that we're going to work with you, the MSP, to document what the DR needs to look like. And when you need it, you make a phone call. With that being said, we'll provide you with the right kind of VPN options so you can connect. And this is where this testing piece is going to come back into play, is that it's all SLA based. This testing that I was talking about that we can do locally in your environment, we can do it in our environment and give you a 1 hour guaranteed SLA or a 24-hour SLA. So think about that idea where we can take those systems, spin them up, and answer the eternal question of, do I have a good backup and how long will it take me to recover? And then we can wrap that around a guarantee that we'll spin those up in 24 hours. We're going to give you the tools that you need to be able to access the data. We have the capability of helping you seed the data into the cloud so that you're not trying to push that first full backup over the cloud. We'll ship you a NAS, you do a full to it, you send it back to us, you import it. A key part of this is if you declare and you run inside of our cloud, you might have to come back home and it might be a little bit uncomfortable to do over the wire. So we can take and export your data out to a new appliance, ship you the appliance so that you can help the customer restore at their side. Okay. So when we think about all of this, right, this all comes in together. We're using a local appliance to give you sound protection on a secure platform where we're doing this ransomware protection. We're going to use testing both locally and in the cloud if we're utilizing those SLAs, where we can actually guarantee that we can spin them up and know what that's going to look like. So ultimately, when it's all said and done, you can recover. The ultimate way that you survive ransomware outside of not being hit is to be able to recover. And that's what all of this is about. What do you think?
I think I think it is very well laid out. I think there's been a lot, 30 years probably of thought process put into it, and to the final product that we see today. I think that you guys have thought of everything. So certainly things I never thought about certifying the backup, but no, that's golden.
I think I've been told that I'm certified before, but I don't think that's what they were talking about. So.
Gotcha.
A little bit of difference.
Good deal. Well, for any MSPs or IT service providers who are watching this live stream and want to actually get started with Unitrends and don't know what to do, what's the first step they should take, Brian?
Yeah, so I'm going to share a link out on my screen here as soon as I can, there we go, exit. And I'm going to share out this QR code, and this is going to take you guys right to a demo page where you can actually sign up directly on there to have further conversation about pricing, specials, but see a full demo, kick the tires a little bit more and really dig into the weeds. With somebody from Matthew's team, I would imagine is going to be on that call. So
awesome.
Definitely going to want to sign up to do that.
Well, that's perfect. And if you're watching this and you're hearing about Unitrends, please, when you make that discovery call with Unitrends, let them know you heard about Unitrends from IT Business Owners Group. So that's great. Well, awesome. Is there anything else that we need to share with the community while we're here?
A couple of things that I did want to just update everyone on, in case it's been a while since you've talked to us, if you have talked to us before. One of the things that MSPs aren't often aware of is that, we don't charge up front for an appliance. And that's something that a lot of times has scared off MSP clients in the past. But we've baked all that together for the MSP community so that it's just a monthly service that you can mark up. It makes it real simple to bring your clients into it. And I would also add that one of the recent updates is that we have a small form factor appliance now. So one of the limitations, of course, is it doesn't have the compute power on board. So some of the virtualization that you would do, on the appliance, you wouldn't be able to do with those. But our full cloud is there. Our full disaster recovery as a service is still available to you with those, and that brings it in at a lower price point. So it's something to think about if you guys haven't talked to us in a while.
Sounds great. Well, I am super excited, and I really can't thank you guys enough for your time today. I really appreciate the demo, and if you haven't thought about Unitrends before or considered it, give them a try. Reach out to Brian, his
Great.
team, and let them know you watched the demo today and that you're interested in learning more. So awesome.
Happy to help.
Sounds great. Thank you guys so much for your time. I hope you all stay cool, and we'll catch you next time.
Well,
Thanks.
thank you, Scott. Yeah, stay cool yourself, man.
All right.
It's going to be hot.
That's right. For the next couple days at least. So y'all have a good day.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.